Yes, let's make even more work for ourselves as podcasters. Why don't we just add one more thing to do every time we publish an episode? But the thing is, there's a difference between doing something for the sake of it, and there's a difference between doing something that matters. And the more that we dig into podcasting, the more that podcasting is adopted by the mainstream media, people like Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts pushing more and more innovative features out, the more important your episode level cover art becomes. And I'm going to tell you why in just a moment. This is, of course, the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show from me, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy, an all-round podcast blooming geek. I am the CEO at Rebel Base Media. We make a pile of podcasting stuff. We've got a podcast recording production studio. We build podcast websites, productivity. We teach people podcasting with the Podcast Success Academy. And we also build the world's finest podcast host. The world's only podcast host that cares about your actual audience growth. Captivate.fm, where you can host multiple podcasts for one simple cost. So look, go and check it out. If you don't believe the hype, go and check it out for yourself. Jump on board. I'd love to see you in there, and you'll see that myself and the team are there to help you every step of your podcasting journey. Go and do that for 7 days totally free at Captivate.fm. Now, like I said, let's just add more work into your podcast workflow. It's a total pain in the backside. Honestly, it really, really is. It feels like that with all the new tools and the new software that's cropping up all the time, something that I'm very, very passionate about. You know, most of the things that are coming out in podcasting right now don't really make that much of a difference. Do you know what? That's just the way I feel. Okay. They're just really kind of startups that are there to cash in on podcasting. But there are some certain movements that are happening, certain improvements that are happening within the podcasting space. And the way that your episode level cover art is displayed within the podcast apps is developing, it's changing, it's moving on, all right? And that is something that you need to be on top of as a podcaster. So that's what I'm going to talk about in just 1 second. But first of all, let me give a quick shout to AWeber. Look, email marketing, you've got to be doing it for your podcast. If you're not, you're leaving relationships, you're leaving potential revenue on the table, but more importantly, you're not giving your listeners a way to connect with you directly, all right? Email is still the best way to do that, regardless of all the new tech that's springing up in podcasting. The one thing that never goes away is the email. So please go and check AWeber out. They're my supplier, the wonderful team. I love them over there. I just kind of helped them with their Beyond the Podcast Summit last week. Go and check out AWeber for 90 days at markasquith.com/AWeber. So, not so long ago, not very many podcast listening apps supported episode level cover art. Now, episode level cover art is, you know, the little square album cover that you create for your podcast. You know, the show level cover art. So mine is that orange thing. It's got the Podcast Accelerator on there. It's got my little name on there. It looks kind of cute. That's the show level. Every single episode that I produce now, and I didn't used to do this up until about 400 episodes in, maybe later than that, actually, probably more like 600 episodes into the 7-Minute Mentor. I didn't start to produce episode level cover art, where I would produce a square cover art, upload it to something like Captivate per episode. And the reason for that was that there was only certain apps like Overcast that used to support this, but more and more podcast listening devices, podcast outlets, Podchaser, the Spotifys of the world, Google, and so on and so forth, they're showing at episode level the cover art that you supply for each episode. And rightly so. It's rife, and outlets, like I said, like Spotify, are even creating it for you. I noticed it a while ago that if you don't create it for yourself, Spotify in their directory listings and in their what to listen to next, the discovery section on Spotify, will take a little transcript of what you're doing and it will create some cover art based on the words in your podcast. So the time is right now for you to control your audio brand, and episode level artwork is a big part of the experience. Now, why is it so important? Well, look, we're putting out a lot of repurposing features with Captivate. We're going to allow you to repurpose your content off to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and do a lot of ace things with it. So not only repurpose full episodes, but start to put out audiograms and all sorts of things. And the key thing is that if something just looks the same, it's like, you know, if you walk past a shop and it's got a sale on and it's got the same stuff in the sale all the time, you get a little bit desensitized to it. You know, you kind of just don't really appreciate what is available to you. And it's the same with episode level cover art. If all you're doing all the time is showing your main cover art, number one, it gets a little bit stale. But number two, it doesn't really look very contextual because brand is all about experience. Being an audio influencer is all about making sure that context is given. And in particular, one of the big things that I feel is vital here is to understand the role that Google is starting to play in podcasting, which is episode level work. Google are saying now that, we're going to transcribe your audio in the back end. And what we're going to do when we've transcribed that audio is we're going to search that audio and display podcast episodes based on contextual long tail keywords. I don't think the broad keywords are going to, if you search for insurance, I don't think you're going to start to see podcasts pop up because context is gone. But long tail will be vital here. So how to choose the right insurance company in San Antonio, that is a very specific search term. And if your podcast has that, in the kind of the phrasing, the keywords, the way that we talk, SEO is becoming a new frontier, and I think podcasting is becoming the new frontier of SEO. I was talking about that yesterday at an event that I spoke at. SEO is one, now a vital part of podcasting, where it's always been on the fringes, but two, podcasting is now a vital part of SEO, something that I'm going to do a little bit more content on moving forward. But without episode level cover art, context is gone, and Google is always looking at context. Let's think this through a little bit further, all right? Number one, it's amazing to see an episode-level piece of cover art when you're listening to something. Overcast has done it for a while by reading your ID3 tags, so make sure you're putting your episode-level cover art in your ID3 tags as well as uploading it to your host, such as Captivate. But what you've also got to consider is this. Google, right now, we don't know what they're doing in terms of search algorithms for podcasts. But what we do know is that Google is always trying to serve the best results to its users. Ergo, we know that algorithmically they're always changing. Therefore, we know that certain practices that may work now may not work in the future. But we also know that context when it comes to Google is king. It always has been, all right? No matter what you say, context in SEO has always been king. So if all else is equal, and let's assume further down the line that algorithmically Google decides what the heck constitutes context when it comes to audio. Well, does this episode have cover art that matches the context of the episode? If it does, well, maybe give that a little bit more priority inside the search results against an episode that might say the same stuff and cover the same topic, but that doesn't have contextual artwork. What I'm trying to say here is that episode level artwork is not only a brand piece, it's not only a visual piece, but moving forward, this is wild speculation, but I truly believe that it could be a ranking factor. It could be a ranking factor. I truly believe that, all right? So let's get on top of it, all right? You can use Canva. Maybe you work with someone like podcastdesign.studio to create your cover art. Whatever it is, whoever you work with, let's start creating some podcast episode level cover art because it not only makes you look better in the search results, but it gives your listeners a better experience and it shows that you actually care about the episode. Shows that you're actually just not on the hamster wheel and the cycle of producing stuff. You will be startled. Go and download some of the biggest podcasts, especially in the business entrepreneurial space. Go and download some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Download their MP3 files. They ain't doing it right. They ain't doing it right. They ain't putting ID3 tags in there. They're not putting episode-specific cover art in there. Go and get an edge, all right? Go and put yourself in front just a little bit. Start prepping for the future and concentrate on your podcast's brand. And also, thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I know it's one of those things where podcasts come and go, but I love chatting about podcasting. It's a big part of my life. Honestly, I absolutely adore talking about it. And some of the things that are working on here at Rebel Base Media, and certainly with Captivate and Productivity, the two products that I'm most closely associated with at the moment. And of course, some of the changes that we're making to podcast websites. We've got huge changes coming through to about February next year with podcast websites. And it's amazing that you guys are there to support me, and that you in particular, the constant listener, the person that tunes in and listens to me every single day. You are Evo, James, Annette, Raf, David. It's fantastic that you do this, and I appreciate you so very much. Stephanie, you're one of the newest, I guess, additions to the Podcast Accelerator family, so thank you so much to everyone that supports me. And look, go and try Captivate out. Captivate is the like I truly believe this. I stand by this. I think it's the easiest and the most powerful podcast host there is. Knowing what I know about what's coming, the fact that we are doing what we're doing now in version 1 is absolutely insane. So knowing what's coming, I urge you to go and take a look at Captivate.fm for a 7-day free trial. Until the next time, enjoy yourself, whatever you're doing, and never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.